welcome on in to another episode of Getting Wild with Terry and Friends, NHL Preview Show Edition. I'm Terry, Nick beside me, Ian bottom left, and we have Melissa, the resident Penguins fan, joining us here to give her opinion on how the Penguins offseason has gone. Melissa, say hi. Maybe for some people that don't know you, just give a little introduction about yourself.
Sure, and thanks so much for having me on. It's been a while, so I miss coming on here. So, Terry, it's great to see your face, Ian and Nick as well. So I guess you could call me the resident Penguins fan that lives in Chicago. I am used to be a Blackhawks fan, and then I kind of switched sides over. So I'm a huge Sidney Crosby fan. He is the main reason why I fell in love with the game of hockey. I grew up watching him religiously, became a Penguins fan, followed him along that road, all the Stanley Cups he's won. So I still do watch the Blackhawks, but if I had to pick a team over another, I am definitely Penguins. I'm wearing my Gensel jersey, obviously. So excited to talk with you guys, but not be too biased today.
Awesome. We'll get right started with the first segment. Additions and subtractions. Look at the offseason here, what Pittsburgh did. Looking at the additions, Dustin Tokarski would be their third goaltender, in my opinion at least. Jan Ruda, Drake Kajulia. Ian Kajulia.
There you go.
Yeah. Josh Archibald, Ryan Poling, Ty Smith, and Jeff Petrie. I was incorrect in the Devils show. Ty Smith went to Pittsburgh, not Boston. I don't know how I messed that up, but yes, Ty Smith to Pittsburgh. Leaving the team, John Marino, Mike Matheson, Uso Ricola, Brian Boyle, Louis Domingue, and Evan Rodriguez. So taking a look at it, kind of an even off-season here. You got rid of Matheson and Marino. You brought in Jan Ruda, Ty Smith, Jeff Petrie. Ty Smith is a player I'm very high on. Has a lot of offensive capabilities. Defense still needs a lot of work, but he's young, and I do think he's going to do a lot of good things here in Pittsburgh. Ryan Poling scored 3 goals in his first game, and I believe it was his first game, but he never really got that chance in Montreal. I don't expect him, if he is playing in the lineup, he'd probably be on the fourth line here in Pittsburgh. We'll see what he can do. But I think the big name leaving is Evan Rodriguez and Mike Matheson. But overall, pretty even addition subtractions off season here in Pittsburgh. No big moves. There was talk about Malkin signing somewhere else. There was talk about Letang, but both players are staying in Pittsburgh. So we'll go to Nick next. What do you think? Additions and subtractions for the Penguins?
Yeah, I think it's pretty even what they did. They lost the playoff goat there, Louis Domingue, that carried them to to almost a series win against the Rangers. And then I know they also lost Melissa's favorite Penguin there, Evan Rodriguez. I know how much she raved about him last year and how much she loved him. So I know you're sad to see him gone as well. They lost a couple defensemen, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then on the additions, I like Jan Ruda. He was one of those decent depth guys for the Lightning. Ty Smith has that offensive defenseman. Offensive upside as a defenseman, but yeah, as Terry mentioned, the defensive game's a big question mark. Archibald was a nice little third stringer for a third liner for Edmonton, so I guess that's a little depth piece there. Overall, it feels pretty balanced out what they lost and what they gained. So I don't think that they improved too much from over the offseason here, but I don't think they got their subtractions that much worse either. So yeah, it's about a break even addition subtractions here.
For sure. Melissa, what's your thoughts on the addition and subtractions Anyone you're excited to see on this list or sad to see go? What's your opinions here?
I mean, for as far as who's gone, obviously Nick was spot on with a defenseman, but Matheson and Marino I think Matheson was probably the biggest one that I was sad to see go. Boyle, he was getting older. He was just a great leader on that team on the fourth line. So he also is that type of player that comes in off the bench and can produce. So I'll probably be sad just because that he's probably a great addition in the locker room. And then Domingue, obviously, that was probably, we knew that even before the season started for this season. Evan Rodriguez, he hasn't even been picked up yet, I don't think, which is a little surprising. He was somebody who you love to hate him. There are games you loved him, and then there are games that he just drove you insane, which was probably more games he drove you insane than you loved him, especially in the playoffs there. I think my biggest surprise for our addition was Petrie. I thought he was done. He had a pretty bad season. I think I think I looked at his plus minus and he was minus 25 or something. So to me, that's just showing that they're adding more veteran experience to this team. I don't think that any of these additions are a wow factor where it's this guy's going to come in and, be anywhere above the third line. I think those have already been solidified, but, to me, it just seems like they just kind of added additional veterans to the spots that they removed.
All right. Mama Betts is happy that Marino's gone.
Oh, Mama Betts, how are you?
The additions suck.
We're trying to be positive here.
Yeah, there's not any big names additions.
You haven't gotten to me yet.
Yeah. And Ian, additions, subtractions, what do you think?
I don't know if this team knows what they're doing, short term or long term, quite honestly. They're like Washington. We talked about the Capitals yesterday. I don't think they don't want to let go of the fact that they're not really a true Stanley Cup contender anymore. They still think, we got Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, Kuznetsov, all these veterans here. We've still got to compete and go for a Stanley Cup. And I think Ron Hextall, Brian Burke, and the front office of the Penguins, they're in the same boat right now. They think they can still contend. I don't think they can. They still want to contend, and obviously that's their prerogative. But I don't know if this roster's right in the mix to contend right now. I mean, you look at the additions, Ryan Poehling's got a ton of upside, we think, but he never showed it in Montreal. He had countless opportunities with the big club there, and he never stuck because the consistency was just never there. His defensive play away from the puck was never good enough. And if you're going to be a center, you better damn well be a good two-way player. And Ryan Poehling just wasn't that enough for the Montreal Canadiens, and they got to the point where, it's time to punt and move on. And that's exactly what they did. So Poehling goes to the Penguins in that deal. Jeff Petrie goes to the Penguins in that deal. Melissa's spot on in what she said about Petrie. Just a disaster of a season for him last year. Now, a lot of that is you're stuck on a horrible hockey team that had a miserable season. Nothing ever went right from day one. So I'm actually going to be nice with Petrie and think that maybe a change of scenery, get into a little bit of a better situation. At least Pittsburgh's going to be contending for a playoff spot at the very least. Maybe that's going to put him in a better frame of mind, allow him maybe a better team surrounding him to be able to get some of that confidence back. Drake Caggiula is a bit, a depth piece at this point. The one that I like in terms of the additions, you want to talk about an addition that I really like, it's Jan Ruda from the Tampa Bay Lightning. All you do is you see this guy year in and year out in the playoffs, and we saw it again last year as well. The guy would basically put his face in front of a car. I'm convinced of it, coming at him 100 miles an hour. That's what he would do for his hockey team. I mean, he blocks a million shots. He's absolutely fearless. He's a warrior. He'll take punishment. You think, this guy's not coming back. He's hurt. He comes back and barely misses a shift. Those are guys you win with in the National Hockey League. And Jan Ruda, physical defenseman, like I say, good in front of the net, will clear out the front of the net, will knock someone down so that they don't get a loose puck. Very good in terms of blocking shots. So that's a nice element added to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. No question about that. As far as who they lost, look, I'm disappointed they lost Mike Matheson. I was surprised they moved him. He's coming off the best season, in my opinion, of his career. And I think he's maybe only going to get better from here because he's only 28 years old. I think it was his best season yet. Career high in goals, 11, assists, 20, plus-minus rating, plus 12. It's the best he's had in his career. 97 hits, physical, played almost 20 minutes a night on average. I mean, you're going to take – that's a big part of that blue line that you're going to be missing now. And you're going to have to hope that Ty Smith, who's been a big-time disappointment in New Jersey, is going to fill that void. And, you know, John Marino goes the other way. John Marino hasn't lit it up necessarily to as much as Pittsburgh wanted, but Marino, I still had him as the better player last year than Ty Smith. You know, even with Marino kind of struggling a little bit, Ty Smith was awful. You know, he's supposed to be an offensive defenseman. He gave you, 5 goals, 15 assists last year. He was a nightmare in his own end. The whole Devils team was, don't get me wrong, but he was a big part of it. The problem, Ty Smith with the defensive play. So I think when you look at it, Ty Smith being on this blue line is a defensive liability until he proves me otherwise. And the only way he does that is if he steps his game up. And we've got to wait to see if that happens. So there's just a lot of moving parts. And I like Ruda. Paling's got some upside, but it's been a disappointment. Petrie, I think, can only be better. But how much is that going to make this Pittsburgh team better? So when it's all said and done, it's just basically a big old mixed bag for Pittsburgh and for a team that's, you know, right on the borderline, the fringe, if you will, of whether they're in or out in the playoffs. May not be good enough for them this year, but all over the place, I think they are with their transactions in the offseason.
Yeah, Mama Bet says that you're right, Ian. Don't know why we got Ty Smith. I think he has potential. That's what the Penguins are hoping. They see his potential and are hoping. They're taking a chance. They're taking a chance that he's going to turn out to what his potential is.
2018 first-round draft pick. You know, thought of very highly when the Devils drafted him, Ty Smith. So maybe it's a change of scenery situation where, bam, he gets out of there, goes to Pittsburgh. And look, if there's anyone that's going to coach him up, it's Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan is a great coach. All right, so let's keep that in mind. If there's some coach that's going to get Ty Smith to realize some of that untapped potential, perhaps it's Sully.
For sure. We'll go on to the next part of the show, which is looking at the prospects and upcoming free agents, as well as the current cap hit. So currently Pittsburgh fully healthy, but they are $1.4 million over the cap. So they are going to have some moves to make here before the regular season starts. Looking at the prospect pool, yikes! Not a very good prospect pool for Pittsburgh, but they've made the playoffs for 16 consecutive years, and when you do that, your prospect pool is not going to be very good. So there obviously are some prospects: Pickering, Poulin, Ty Smith, Puustinen. But none of them are really going to be that top high end, or they're not projected to be that top high end prospect. So Pittsburgh definitely has some work to do with the prospect pool. Looking at free agents, the ones that stand out to me, Tristan Yari, Jason Zucker. Those are the two big names that stand out for me. Brian Dumoulin as well. So Pittsburgh could, if this year does go south, they could potentially start a rebuild, or if they kind of continue on making the playoffs, their playoff streak continues, they might re-sign some of these guys. But I'm not exactly sure what the future holds for Pittsburgh or what Hextall is going to do, but he does have some options coming up here after this year. Ian, we'll go back to you next. What do you think about the prospects and upcoming free agents for the Penguins?
Yeah, as far as the prospect pool goes, it's one of the worst in the NHL, but you're not splitting the atom figuring that one out when you're competing every year for a Stanley Cup, and you're basically in the mix ever since Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin arrived on the scene, which was mid-2000s. And every year at the trade deadline, what are you doing? You're upgrading the roster. You're trading away draft picks. You're trading away prospects to make that NHL roster, the current roster, as good as it can be to compete for Stanley Cup. And they've basically done this every year for the last 15 years now. Well, no shit, you're going to have a weak prospect pool. And that's exactly what we've got here with the Penguins right now. It's depleted. It's bare. I mean, the cupboard's bare. They don't have a lot of upper echelon, upper tier, superstar level prospects. No big time, forwards that are going to light it up for 40, 50 goals a year. The defensive prospect pool is very bare as well. There's not a whole lot there on that. They've really got to look at the defense, because they've got basically a couple of left shot defensemen that are waiting in the wings in this Pittsburgh Penguins prospect system right now. Not much after that. So they are, they're going to have to hope that when the Crosby and Malkin era comes to an end, and it's winding down probably right now, their window to win a Stanley Cup or try to contend. And I don't even know if the roster is good this year enough to contend, but they still are planning on trying to make a run for it this year. But after that, they're going to have to get these scouts in order and say, you know what, get to work, boys, because they've got to replenish this prospect system in a big way, because there's not a whole lot there right now. But we said this about Washington yesterday. We've said this about a bunch of teams, that all these teams that are contending for the Stanley Cup for many years in a row, like Pittsburgh, Washington, teams like that, you're not going to have a good, deep prospect pool. It's just that simple. As far as the who's restricted free or upcoming free agents next year, it's basically a one-year tryout kind of for Ty Smith. Let's see how it goes. They got him in that deal. He's going to have to show something. I certainly think it's even more so for Poehling, because Poehling is a guy that didn't pan out for him in Montreal. We'll see how it goes for him, and a lot of UFAs next year. And obviously the big one on that list so far is Brian Dumoulin. Although if you listen to our guy Vito, he'll tell you it's probably Teddy Bluger, because he played with him a little while ago. So he'll probably say, got to sign my guy Teddy Bluger next year. Don't let him slip through the cracks. But no, for me, it's Brian Dumoulin. No question about that, because when he's healthy, he's a very good defenseman for this team. He's probably been right there as one of, if not the best defenseman the Penguins have had the last 5 years. I think he's played better than Letang, because we've seen a little decline in Letang's play the last few years. So Brian Dumoulin definitely will be the big priority in terms of that unrestricted group of players going into next season. Tristan Jari, it's a big year for him. There's still, I think, he definitely better last year. Let's give him that. He had a better season last year, 2 years ago in the playoffs. As you well know, I was not happy with the way he played against the Islanders in that playoff round, but it was better last year. And I think this is kind of, you want the big contract. You want to definitely show yourself to be a long-term number one goaltender in the National Hockey League. Go out there, prove it this season, have a big year for us, bring us to the playoffs, win a lot of games for us, even on nights maybe we don't have our best game, steal some games for us. That's going to be the challenge to Tristan Jari, and I'm sure that's something that Hextall and Burke are going to be mindful of before going to the table to negotiate with Jari prior to next season.
For sure. Melissa, what do you think about the cap situation and upcoming free agents for your Penguins? You're muted.
Goats are muted. Sorry. Ian nailed the prospect part there. That is something that, on all honesty, I'm terrible with prospects. So I kind of just look at the regular teams. So I could touch on the free agents part. Drew O'Connor was somebody who I really liked. He got some ice time last season and dealt with some injuries, but I do know that Pittsburgh does like adding him into the mix. So I think that he has potential to have a breakout year as well, as long as he avoids those injuries. And then Jari, obviously, we'll never forget Ian's rant. That goes down in top 5 moments of any hockey show for sure. This is his year to shine. They did sign DeSmith. So it just kind of puts it out there. Who's going to be the starter, in next year? Is it going to be Jari, or are they going to keep DeSmith? So huge year for him. And I do agree. I think that he did improve, and it was heartbreaking to see them go down in the playoffs, because that he gave it all he could, and it really wasn't his fault why they lost that last game there. Heinen, they signed for 1 year, so he's probably going to be gone, I'd imagine, next year. But Heinen did some good things with Carter. He showed them that he deserved that extra additional year for contract. So just kind of the other names that Ian didn't touch on, but 100% agree with. I didn't know that Vito played with Bluger, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think Dumoulin is someone as well, just because defensively Letang is getting old and they do need to focus more on that area. So Dumoulin is going to be a priority as well. So 100% agree with you there, Ian. And yeah, that's pretty much mainly all the names that he didn't touch on.
All right. Nick, what do you think about the free agents, prospects, cap situation for the Penguins?
Yeah, obviously that first name that pops up on that list is Tristan Yariwich. I don't know what you guys were talking about. I thought he played great in the playoffs a couple of years ago. I thought he was spot on, spectacular. But regardless, looking at all these potential free agents, it can give the Penguins a really good opportunity to blow this shit up halfway through the year if it's not going well, and trade half these pieces. Like if Yari's not having a great year, you trade him. Dumoulin, you could potentially get prospects back, rebuild your prospect pool because you've been competing for how long. And if the season's not starting off the way they want to, this would be a great chance for them to be able to just sell everything and start the rebuilding process. Obviously, they still got the top guys, but that was just the first thing when I saw all these free agents is there's opportunities for them to get some prospects back and start rebuilding the prospect pool if things don't go the way they want to this year, which I don't know if they will or not. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking to re-sign some guys, I mean, I think Dublin's got to be the top one on the list there. And then if he plays well, Yari. But maybe signing DeSmith the way they did in the offseason lights a fire underneath Yari's ass, saying, "Hey, we got your replacement here if you don't show up." So it's interesting to see all these all the potential free agents this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys played. Now, with all these guys being on free agents, we can see the Penguins be a great team this year because, well, all these guys need a contract, and it's all these guys' contract years, and all of a sudden they have career years out of nowhere. So you never know. It all depends on how the Penguins are doing winning-wise, depending on how they re-sign these guys. There's a few teams I've mentioned that where if they're winning, yeah, they'll re-sign some of them. If they're losing, goodbye, you're gone. So it really depends on how the Penguins are doing this season. Depends on how much of those guys they re-sign.
Here's their issue, and the trade deadline. I believe that they're way out of it. They're going to sell off, and it's time to finally admit it's time to look toward the future. But I don't think the Pittsburgh Penguins, as long as they've got a healthy Crosby and a healthy Malkin up front, Gensel and company, they're not going to be in a position where they're bad enough this upcoming season from October to February when the trade deadline is that they're going to be way out of it. They're going to be right there. And I know these two guys, Hextall and Burke, they're both stubborn. They will absolutely keep this team intact and try to make the playoffs, even if they're 3-4 points out at the trade deadline. They'd have to be way out, not even close to contention for the playoffs for them to just say, you know what, it's time to tear it down and rebuild and start over. That's what it would take. So I think in theory, there's a possibility they could do it, but I just don't know if the Penguins aren't going to be that bad. I think from October to February, they'd have to still make the decision, say, you know what, risk benefit analysis. We're 3-4 points out. We're in a tough conference here. We really want to put all our chips in to try to make the playoffs. It's not guaranteed we even get in. And maybe they should still make that decision to basically try to trade away some of these pieces, get something back in return, look toward the future. But you never know and plus you've got to factor in the Crosby Malkin element of it, where Crosby doesn't want to be part of a rebuild at this stage of his career. No way. He's thinking, you know what, I want to put another Stanley Cup on my resume. So these are tough decisions that are going to be coming up mid-season around the deadline for Pittsburgh, and it's all going to be contingent upon where they are in the standings.
For sure. I don't want to compare Pittsburgh and Chicago, but with the keeping Kane and keeping Taves much longer than you should have, it could turn out to be the same situation here with Crosby, Malkin.
No. Kane and Taves are completely different than Malkin and Sid. Completely different.
Yes.
They're like different eras.
Talent-wise, Taves is still like he's lost a step. But
Taves is never going to be as good as Sid was the greatest of all time in that era.
Yeah. We'll look at possible lineup now. This is the lineup that I put together. Obviously, it's just my opinion.
Oh, this is really cool, Terry.
Yeah, we can move things around here. Top line, I think Crosby, Gensel, and Rust. I think it's pretty much going to be the top line.
I think Raquel's going to play a little factor, though. I've been seeing he's been been slated to potentially switch with Rust there.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Well, I could see that too. If you have Rust here on the second line with Malkin and Zucker, move Kel up.
Just an option. I would like
yeah.
that because that's what we saw kind of in the playoffs.
The Rust.
Yeah.
Third line, I have Carter with Heinen and Kapanen. Fourth line, Bluger with McGinn and Archibald. And then Poling, O'Connor, and Nylander are kind of extras here based on injury. Drew O'Connor could definitely make it over McGinn. Like you said, Melissa, the Penguins do like Drew O'Connor, so maybe he makes it over McGinn here. Looking at the defense, Dumoulin and Letang. Then I got Pedersen and Petrie, Ruda, Chad Ruidle, Pierre-Oliver Joseph, a prospect that I didn't have listed on the prospect pool because of his age, and he's played for the Penguins already. He should find his way somewhere into the lineup. And then Ty Smith is probably an extra at this point. He might get some time. We'll see. And then goaltending is pretty much settled with Jari to Smith and Tokarski. Looking at the Penguins, they were 5th in goals against last year. Will they stay around? I don't think there's going to be a huge defensive drop with Pittsburgh. Really, in my opinion, with this lineup that we have, we could see a similar result to last year. We'll get to that in the next part of the show, the futures. But I still think this is a really good lineup, and I see them being third in the Metro. They're my choice there for third. But Penguins, 16 years in the playoffs. Looking at this lineup here, I think it is good enough to get to 17, in my opinion. Nick, we'll go to you next. What do you think about the Penguins lineup here?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's a very similar to last year. I think there will be a little bit of defensive drop off, especially if you're going to have Ty Smith in there and all that. If he makes, I mean, I don't know why you go out and acquire someone like Ty Smith and have him as a healthy scratch, other than maybe to develop him a little bit more. But looking at this roster here, they're still the 4th oldest in hockey. This is still an older lineup, and I know I shouldn't really be talking the Islanders are number 1 on that list. But there's one big question mark, and it's right in the center there on the second line. Will Malkin actually play a full season? We've seen him play, I think, one season where in the last, 8 years, where he didn't miss like a fifth of the season at some point. He's only played at least 70 games once since 2012-13. Other than that, he finds a way to miss games at a time, and that's a really concerning thing for the Penguins if they want to. And this is one of those things where if he's not playing halfway through the year because he gets hurt halfway through the year, because he has done that plenty of times the last few years, and who knows, maybe then they do sell off if Malkin's not in that lineup. So that's one big concern for me is now if they can get a healthy Malkin for 70 plus games, this team's a better team. Because I do think there is top 6 potential there. I mean, I don't mind that top 6 with Crosby, Rakal, Gensel, Zucker, Malkin, and Ross. I think that is a strong top 6. It's just, can Malkin stay healthy to center that second line? So I do think it's still a solid line. It's just, I don't know if they got that much better than last year. And I know plenty of teams around the Eastern Conference have gotten better. So I feel like they just stay the same, and we'll see what happens if the teams around them got that much better where they can pass them up or not. So overall, I think the lineup's still solid. They'll score some goals with that top 6. Defensemen, question mark there. Letang, another year older. Crosby, another year older. Malkin, another year older. Is this the end of the line? I don't know. But it's still a solid lineup. It's just, do they still stay healthy, and do the teams around them get better like we think they will?
All right. Melissa, what do you think about the lineup for the Penguins?
Yeah, Nick, you do bring up a great point about Malkin. That's something that he has consistently fought injuries throughout his career. But, at the end of the day, I think that Penguins have shown that they still can win when Malkin is not in the lineup, and they are able to do so. I think, when you look at the Metro Division, you have a couple teams that have older, like you mentioned. You have your Islanders, you have the Capitals and Penguins, and then you have your young teams that are up and coming, the Rangers, probably CBJ you could add in the mix there. Yeah, Devils may not be there this
Well,
year.
the Devils are
They're young.
When you said young teams, they're the
They're young.
youngest
Yes,
average
that will be
age in the
that
year.
will be competitive, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
The one person that I think really needs to step up this year is Kapanen. He was probably my frustration with him last year, similar to Evan Rodriguez. I think that he really struggled, and they did pay him a lot, and I think that he needs to step up as well and earn that money that he did make. But again, Sidney Crosby, this is probably, like you guys mentioned, his farewell. This is really, they only have a couple, 2-3 years left maybe. And when there were rumors of Malkin getting traded away and it was almost a done deal, Crosby picked up that phone and would not allow that to happen. So the team has always stood beside him and around him. And I think that the veteran presence obviously is what's going to lead the team. And then Gensel will probably have another breakout year. He was phenomenal in the playoffs. You see this kid skating off season. He's got such an amazing work ethic. He's going to really be the leader when Sid eventually leaves. But as far as defense, again, this is definitely going to be a team that's going to be scoring more goals and letting up goals. We'll probably get a lot of overs with them again this year, like we did last year. But they will have a fun offense to watch, whether they have Raquel up there with Sid or if they have Rust up there. I think either options, they will still generate chances. But again, it's going to come down to injuries, and even Carter was battling injuries. So as long as they can stay healthy, I think that they will make a run. Do I think they'll win the Stanley Cup? Probably not, because I think that there are other teams that are stronger than them. But do I think they make the playoffs? Yes. And it's just by looking at that division and seeing where other teams are. So we shall see. It will be a fun season again, and they always like to surprise me in the playoffs. So that's just my prediction for now. But again, we'll have to see where they're at for game one and then go from there.
All right. Perfect. Ian, what do you think about the Penguins lineup here?
It really is the health question lingering over this team like a black cloud. Can Evgeny Malkin play 60-plus games at least, if not 70? And that's asking a lot at this stage for Malkin, because we just haven't seen evidence of it. Even Brian Rust has missed 20-plus games the last 2 seasons. Crosby's missed time the last couple seasons. So there's multiple, and you're talking about 3 of the best forwards right there on the team that, we've had some issues with them staying on the ice for a full season. So that's obviously significant. Jeff Carter now another year older for him, late 30s now. Kapanen's been a disappointment. There's no question. Penguins are experiencing the frustration the Toronto Maple Leafs did with Kasperi Kapanen. Just not against 11 goals. You need more than that from him, period, than what he gave you last year. There's no question. That's why he's playing on the third line now. They initially wanted him up on the second line with Evgeny Malkin, but when you're getting Bubkas production-wise from him, they had to drop him to the third line, and that's exactly what they did there with him. So, and now when you look at who they, some of the departed pieces, like Rodriguez, for instance, who actually did give them some depth scoring last year, it's more important for Kapanen to, get his head out of his ass and be consistent now. He hasn't been able to do it. Last year was a horrible season for him, and it was shocking to me too, is the Penguins decided, we're going to up Kapanen for 2 years, $6.4 million deal back in July. It was kind of surprising, but it tells you that they still think he can turn this around. And that's a little vote of confidence for a guy that's coming off a bad year. So Kapanen should be thanking the Penguins management for saying, hey, having some faith in me, even though I didn't really perform last year. So it's going to be very important for him to step up. Obviously, look, if they're all healthy, right? Gensel, Crosby, Raquel, Zucker, Malkin, Rust. I mean, that's a good top 6. You're obviously going to be able to score some goals with that group, no question. But health's a paramount concern. Letang's coming off one of the best seasons he's had, believe it or not. He had a kind of a rough year 2 years ago. especially defensively. Like, we're just seeing them losing body position, losing foot races for loose pucks, just defensive play that was not great. I thought last year is a lot better in the defensive end, and we always know he's going to give you the offensive component from the blue line. That's why him and Dumoulin are such a great pair, right? Letang can rush the puck up the ice, get the attack going, good offensive-minded defenseman, and then there's Dumoulin as his partner, the stay-at-home defenseman, who's terrific in his own end. So that's why that pairing has been a great dynamic for Pittsburgh over the last few years. Pettersson's a pretty steady defenseman, but then there's a whole bunch of, and I like Ruda. Ruda, I've got to throw in the positive category for the defenseman as well, because he's going to be good in his own end, physical block shots. But then there's question marks. Jeff Petrie had a dismal year. If it's like that again this year, that's trouble, because he was a liability in his own end. His offensive production kind of dropped as well. Chad Ruidle, at this stage is just a depth defenseman. Pierre-Olivier Joseph, look, he's going to be knocking on the door, I think, for a 5th or 6th spot on that blue line, no question. Guy that played a lot with Wilkes-Barre Scranton last year in the AHL. Kind of the same thing with Drew O'Connor. Melissa mentioned him. That got a little bit of time with Pittsburgh down the stretch, but had a really good offensive production with the AHL team. He's just got to show now at the NHL level, can he replicate that? And Ty Smith's the X factor. I really do for this blue line. This blue line is a below average blue line, especially in the 3, 4, 5, 6 spots, unless Ty Smith starts to play like a first round talent. And he just hasn't so far in his NHL career. And he sure as hell didn't with New Jersey. That's going to be a critical element. So, but until that happens, Dumoulin and Letang are fine. I got Petrie's question marks there. Ruidle, Joseph, depth defenseman. There's question marks with the bottom 4 defensemen for this Pittsburgh team. So that's why I've got them below average defensively in that regard. I think the 3rd and the 4th line are a little bit shaky. Top 6 is great. But again, you're talking about a bunch of guys that have missed significant time now, multiple seasons, the last 2, 3, 4 years. You got to show they can have that durability this year.
For sure. Even Zucker has got injured.
Yeah, throw him in there. Yeah, exactly.
And then goaltending. Tokarski probably won't see much time unless we see an injury.
It's a tough spot to be in for this team with, this guy, can he stay healthy? This guy, because there's like 4 or 5 forwards on this Pittsburgh team. You can say, can they stay healthy? And if they can, they can be a really great forward group. And if they have multiple guys not staying healthy, then it's going to really, really suffer for this Pittsburgh team. But that's what you get when you're the 4th oldest team in the National Hockey League by average age. You got to deal with this shit. That, that legitimate concern for staying healthy with so many of these players is going to be there.
For sure. We'll look at the futures, the last 5 years and the futures for Pittsburgh to finish off the show. Point total, 102.5. They had 103 last year. So it's the total is assuming that they would get the same result as last year. To make the playoffs, minus 500, yes. Plus 380, no. And then plus 250 to win the division. They are tied with Carolina with the best odds to win the division. I do find it kind of surprising that Pittsburgh has better odds to win the division than the Rangers. That's definitely something interesting that odds makers have done. Not something I agree with, but to win the cup, plus 1,800, again, not something I would bet, but obviously it's minus 500, so you can't really bet it, but I do think Pittsburgh continues their 16-year and they go on to the 17th consecutive playoff year. I do think they head to the playoffs again, but I think that once again they're a first-round exit. I don't see them going very far in the playoffs, but I kind of see this same old with this Pittsburgh team. A lot of people have been saying Pittsburgh is going to take that step back. They haven't quite done it yet. This could be the year, but I'm just going to kind of stick with we see the same old playoff first-round exit for Pittsburgh here. Ian, last 5 years, futures, what do you think for this Pittsburgh team?
So I am interested in under 102.5 with Pittsburgh, definitely. I think that's very high. When you got, like I just said, we got Crosby and Malkin and Rust, who all missed significant time last year. That's a lot to ask, that they stay healthy and to get to 103 or more points, and which is what they got last year. And I'm not convinced they're as good as they were last year. So I could only look under 102.5 points. I'm not don't like the playoff bet as much. I mean, certainly I'm tempted by the plus 380 that's there on the no, but here's the issue. I mean, Washington's got a boatload of issues as much as Pittsburgh, if not more. So they're no sure thing. The Islanders have to prove that they can score consistently. Now, a lot what conspired against them, but I don't know if they improved all that much in the offseason. Devils are still a defensive nightmare with goaltending question marks, and Philly's Philly. Probably not going to be that good again. So, it's going to be a situation where almost by default, Pittsburgh, and someone's got to win third in this Metro division and get in the playoffs automatically. Because like I've said multiple times, you're going to get your 3 guaranteed teams from the Metro winning or getting into the playoffs. Carolina and the Rangers are probably going to be 1-2. It's just a question of who's first, who's second. Then it's a race for third between your Pittsburghs, your Washingtons, your Islanders. Maybe even throw Columbus in there if things come together. If Gaudreau and Laine light it up together on that top line, if Merzlikins proves he's ready to be a number 1 goalie, that could be a team that's contending for third in the division too. Just a lot of question, and every team is flawed in that Metro division outside of the Hurricanes and the Rangers. No question about it. So I prefer the under with the 102.5. I could maybe sprinkle on the no, but almost by default, Pittsburgh could still get it, but health will be contingent on that. Won't take them to win the division, won't take them to win the cup. So that's where I am with the futures for Pittsburgh.
All right. Melissa, do you think the Penguins continue their playoff streak? And what do you think for the futures here?
Their playoff streak of losing the first round.
I mean like making the playoffs. They've made it 16 years in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, I think exactly what Ian says. You have to look at the overall division and see who you think can compete for that additional spot. And from what we're seeing, again, I do think highly of CBJ. I think that they are going to have a breakout year. I hope so. I love that city. I love that team. But do I think that they're going to be better than the Penguins? Probably not. As far as futures go, I'm not really a type of bettor who plays futures. I know a lot of people do. I just hate them because I hate investing money and waiting to get paid out until the end of the season, which I should probably start doing, but I just personally don't do them. If maybe I'll see like halfway through the season where Stanley Cup is at and all of that, then I'll throw that down. But again, who's going to lay minus 500 on the Pittsburgh Penguins? We're not going to come on the show and tell you to do that. That's not smart at all, even if you do win that bet. The only case would really be if you think that these other teams that are younger are going to just beat out Pittsburgh, which I'm sure Nick probably thinks. There is a lot of decent value on that plus 380. If Pittsburgh can't stay healthy, that's probably the best route to look at that. Again, I'm not going to do that because I would not want to root for the Penguins and not make the playoffs this year. What is wrong with me? And to your point, for them to be favored over the Rangers to win a division, I'm assuming that's just the Sidney Crosby factor, right? And the books love to see people's reactions. And I think a lot of bettors probably see Pittsburgh and they think, oh, that's great value at plus 250. We more see Rangers as an up-and-coming team. The kid line, they were phenomenal in the playoffs. I hate to admit it because I hate that team. Sorry, Michael, if you're watching. But I don't think that there's much value on that plus 250. I would pass on that. And then maybe for fun, I'd throw some coffee money on if they win the cup. But that price might change throughout the season. So if you do think that Pittsburgh maybe like last season, they had a slower start and then they started to do better once Malkin came back and Sid came back, you might get better value. So like I said earlier, do I think they make the playoffs? Yes. Do I think they win the Stanley Cup? Unfortunately, no. I think that there are more competitive teams out there. I mean, even just from a speed perspective, when they did play the Avalanche this year, it was like they were skating circles around this team. So as in the Avalanche were. So I just think that there's better teams out there right now, unless Sid pulls his magic, which he typically did for the first 3 games in round 1. But I can't rely on that long term, unfortunately. I think the defense should have been changed around a little bit. So that's just my thoughts there. Again, if you think you want to see them win the cup. Coffee money is always fun to place at the beginning of the season.
For sure. Nick, what do you think about the last 5 years of the Penguins and their futures for this year?
Yeah, when I was looking through all the season point totals, it's 101.5 on my book, but seeing that only a handful of teams have a higher point total than the Pittsburgh Penguins absolutely stunned me. 102.5 absolutely stunned me, because when just looking at last year in the Eastern Conference, every playoff team had 100 points. And it was a very top-heavy conference last year. That's not going to happen again this year. And I think under 102.5 is probably one of my favorite futures if I were to place a season point total, just by strictly, I don't think every single playoff team in the Eastern Conference is going to have 100 points this year. That's just not going to happen, because I think we're going to see a little bit better from the Islanders. I think we're going to see a little bit better from Columbus. We're seeing up-and-coming teams in the Atlantic with Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo. Like, we could see some of those teams steal some of those points that Washington 100 points last year, and Pittsburgh had 103. Boston's not going to have 107. There's a little spoiler for that video, for that stream coming down the line. I don't think it's a good year for black and gold in general, either Boston or Pittsburgh. But I think this conference, the Eastern Conference, is going to be a little bit more competitive than it was last year. And with that being said, I don't think everybody gets 100 points. I think this Penguins team is probably mid-90s. So I think that 102.5 is way too high. It is the Sidney Crosby effect, because he's one of those guys where he's going to take money, because he's one of the best players that we've had in our lifetime, or in my lifetime, at least in the 22 years. And I just see this Pittsburgh Penguins team not finishing with the same amount of points as last year, and other teams around them doing that. And I genuinely think that the third spot in the Metropolitan's a coin toss between New York, Washington, and Pittsburgh. I think those three teams, and then throw Columbus in there as well. So I do think there is great value here in taking plus 380 for them to miss, because I think, and I see this with a couple other teams. I'm not saying Pittsburgh's going to miss. I'm saying the line that you're getting, there's value on them to miss. I can easily see them get the third spot here. I can easily see them get a wild card spot. I think the Atlantic might take both wild card spots potentially, though. So you never know with that as well, because we're seeing much better in the other division. So under 102.5 and to miss the playoffs, I think have value on here, because I see Pittsburgh as a wild card team, maybe the third seed. And I've seen this with a few teams where if I think that they are a wild card team at best, and you're getting nice plus money for them to miss the playoffs, I think there's value on that line. So that's the only reason why I'll take that. I do think the Penguins most likely do make the playoffs, but at plus 380, you're asking or at minus 500, you're asking them to make the playoffs, 87 out of 100 times, something along those lines, which I think is just way too high. So to miss the playoffs at plus 380 would be one of my plays if I was betting futures, and under 102.5 would be probably one of my top season point total plays, strictly because I think that I don't think that the Penguins are going to fall off a cliff, but I think the Eastern Conference is going to be a little bit more competitive than it being decided by 16 points from the 8th to the 9th seed last year.
Yeah, Nick's 100% right with what he said about the bet on the no to miss the playoffs for Pittsburgh. This is not a lock or guarantee that we think for 100% certain Pittsburgh's missing the playoffs. We think that there's a better than a plus 380 price on that prop that for them to miss the playoffs. And that's why we're kind of intrigued by that. And I know Melissa, this is her first time on the preview shows with us here, and I'll reiterate it too, why I think it's going to be so important for the third place to get third in that Metro division. And Nick hinted at it. There's a real chance that the two wild card teams in the Eastern Conference this year are both from the Atlantic division, which is, I think, this year going to be the stronger division top to bottom. Like, this is what I've got probably as an idea in my head for what the playoff landscape will look like. Florida, Toronto, Tampa, in some order, your top three teams in the Atlantic. Carolina, Rangers, and question mark, your top three teams in the Metro. Question mark could be Pittsburgh. Question mark could be Washington, Islanders, and I wouldn't even rule out Columbus, for that third spot. And then your two wild card teams, I think, could be both from the Atlantic. You could have a Boston, Ottawa, two wild card teams. You could have a Buffalo, Ottawa, two wild card teams. Ottawa, I think, is going to be one of your wild card teams.
Tim's going to go nuts if Buffalo.
You know how much I like Ottawa
going
this year. They'll be one of the wild card teams.
I like Ottawa too. I think they were one of the most impressive for us.
That leaves that leaves 3 teams only from the Metro Division in the playoffs. So it's going to be very important to get that 3rd spot. And that's why the pathway to get into the playoffs too for Pittsburgh, when you factor in the plus 380 price on them to miss, even more difficult, and makes that price maybe more appealing. Like I say, I think the chances of them missing are better than that price indicates.
One more thing I want to touch on. I think it's absolutely laughable that the Penguins and the Rangers have the same exact odds, and this is coming from an Islanders fan, to win this division, because I think this Rangers team is leaps and bounds above. It's Carolina and it's New York, and there's a decent gap in between the 2 and the 3. So I thought that seeing them at the exact same odds was crazy. And
yeah, I mean, they can't match the Rangers in the center ice spot. Look at the blue line difference. I'll just rhyme it off here.
Absolutely.
Lindgren, Fox, Andre Miller, Jake Trouba, Braden Schneider, Lundqvist might get in there, or the Penguin blue line. It's a better blue line, 1 through 6. The Rangers goaltending, it's not even a debate. It's not even a discussion in the goaltending. Jari or Shesterkin, take your pick. Yeah, so it's a situation where look, to Nick's point, it is stunning that the odds to win the division are that close between the Rangers and the Penguins. When I see a gap between them.
For sure.
I think it's going to be exciting, though. I think if you're looking at
this year,
like each division is going to be very competitive. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I was saying earlier in the when we were doing the videos that the Pacific Division, I think, is going to be very close. Yeah. And it would be really good for hockey in general if the Eastern Conference was closer, 16 points.
Yeah, last year it was settled with a month and a half left.
Yeah, and that's not good for the sport, in my opinion.
Absolutely not.
It's good for betting, though.
Detroit, Lenny says, let's go Red Wings. Before
the Red Wings can sneak into the playoffs there, too.
I didn't even mention Detroit. I should have.
Yeah.
That's my bad. I said Boston, Ottawa, Buffalo. Ottawa, Detroit could happen. 100%.
Absolutely.
No doubt. I'm
not as high on Ottawa as everybody else is.
Yeah.
I know
they're going to score goals,
not high on Talbot,
but they still have a goaltending issue.
I might have to come back on for that one.
Yeah, well, the Ottawa show will be coming, but that's today's show, the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the content, smash the like button. We appreciate all the support, and make sure to tune in tomorrow, which will be I'm blanking. Not Philadelphia. I think tomorrow we're actually going to Arizona. And then Monday, yeah, we're going to switch because there's a couple people coming on for the Philadelphia show, so I moved Philadelphia to Monday.
Oh, so we get the future Stanley Cup champions then tomorrow.
Yeah, so
the Yotes.
The Yotes.
Thank you for having me on, Terry. This was fun.
No problem. Thanks for coming.
Great job, Melissa.
And
good to see you.
Everyone, have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.